Hello everyone, we are continuing our Altec A5 story, and today we are delving deep into the legend of the compression driver. So I have Botticelli's painting for you, and here we have our heroine holding her diaphragm. And if you are ever wondering, the diaphragm, that's the heart and soul of the compression driver. So this is the membrane of the compression driver, but you do not see it. So the outside you just see a big bulky thing, but this is the moving part in it. And the beauty of it is that you can change the diaphragm in your compression driver. So if you just add too much power and you blow it, then you can replace it. Or you don't need to blow it, and in a home setting, really a single diaphragm will last you longer than your lifespan, no matter how high you crank it, unless you do something really silly, like you would connect your compression driver to your amp without a crossover. That will blow it very fast because it cannot. I will tell you why. But if you use it as intended, as James B. Lansing intended it, then you can listen to as loud as you want in your home and you will never blow it because your eardrums will blow way before you can blow any of these babies. Uh, and Now, just to add some coloration for the legend, we are listening to some medieval music, and Botticelli would have listened to something like this while he was painting this wonderful lady here holding the diaphragm. And I have to tell you guys that I in Italy I saw this painting. I think it was in Firenze, and she wasn't holding a diaphragm. So I really apologize if you travel to Italy and go through the museums. You will find her practically naked. So please do not cry. Apologies for that, but I thought that this deserves a nice introduction. However, I have to add that this medieval music made by the Swedish Volgamut, it's from the Swedish, the Northern European medieval times, so it's highly unlikely that Botticelli would have listened to this music, but his Italian medieval music of his age would have been something similar, with similar instrumentation. And now let's just tie up to our previous episode where I introduced the A5s with John Stronser's article that he wrote for sound practices. I think now the current sound practices, they have their back issues online, but in addition I have these issues on CD. They issued it like 20 years ago or something like that. But plus, in addition to that, I was really lazy to look that CD up, and I got actually these pictures as screenshots from a file that I downloaded from online. So if you just Google up sound practices Altec A5, it will bring you up this article. But if you want to own it, then just go for the sound practices website. They have a bunch of back issues free there, and also if like you were me in the past, like 20 years ago, they issued all their back issues on a CD, and you could buy it. I don't know if those CDs can be bought. Probably they are not in production for decades. So now I put this up here because the diaphragm that you saw, that's, let me just draw it here, that's right here in the back of the compression driver. So that's the membrane that's making the sound, and in the compression driver, that big metal hunk, inside there's a chamber, that's the compression chamber. So when the diaphragm moves, it compresses the air in the chamber, and the chamber has a narrow throat. And from that narrow throat, a tube comes up, which is the middle, it's like the throat of the compression driver, and at the end of it, which is the mouth, that's where the horn attaches. So this big beautiful horn attaches to the mouth of the compression driver. And let's just take one more step about it and look how this compression driver came to being. So the Altec compression drivers and all of the Altec drivers and the Altec A5, they are the babies of James B. Lansing. And he was a really fantastic genius of a person. And he had his Lansing company, and then he merged it with Altec. And Altec actually used to be Western Electric, but then when Western Electric diversified, that part that dealt with sound, it became renamed as Altec. And then when James Lansing's company joined Altec, it got renamed as Altec Lansing. And that's when he created all of these wonderful drivers, the 515, 288, and a whole bunch of others, plus the voice of the theater cabinets, which became the great heritage that we have today. Let me just fast forward to the next track. They are just talking in Swedish. I think that's not much of an interest. Apologies to my Swedish listeners. So anyway, James Lansing, he came up with the 288, and the K was already done way after his death, because sadly he passed away in 1949. He was really young, 47 years old. So Altec Lansing was just a few years old when he passed away, and it was really, really extremely unfortunate, because Altec Lansing was going to go towards bankruptcy, and they had like $20,000 debt to creditors, and James Lansing saw no way out, and he committed suicide. And then later on, the company survived and stayed the staple of his era, and the staple of horn speakers since and before. Eventually, by the time he passed away, he already got out of Altec Lansing and formed his own company, the JBL, which was a few years old at that time. And then JBL still survived, and he formed JBL with the idea to bring home theater sound to the homes. So Altec Lansing was for the movie theaters, and he wanted to diversify towards making home theater. And in his lifetime, it seemed that it's not a possibility. But later on, JBL still stayed strong and a big fame, big name. So when you look at JBL drivers and Altec Lansing drivers, they are almost one of the same. They're all of the creations of James B. Lansing. So when you look at the newer JBL huge compression drivers, they are the brothers of the 288, and the big JBL woofers, they are the brothers of the 515 Altec. And when you apply them, just you use similar criteria how you work with them. Still, the 288 compression driver is a monumental creation, and it has a 2.8-inch diameter aluminum dome, and which is huge. And just think about it. This is like a tweeter with a 3-inch diameter cone, and I have to say that the aluminum dome, that's the new diaphragm. The oldest ones use the diaphragm for 288A. It used phenolic diaphragm, and then they also had the aluminum, and then later on, now you can buy titanium diaphragms. And the best news is that these diaphragms are interchangeable within the 288 models. So if you have a 288B or 288H or 288K, you can use and swap the diaphragms. And even better, if you have JBL compression drivers, many of the JBL compression drivers are compatible with Altecs. And if it's like the same 2.8-inch size diaphragm, they can be used for both JBL and both Altec, the 288 compression drivers. So that's really fantastic because you can change the voicing of your compression driver. So for example, if you use the phenolic diaphragm, it has the best mid-range. Then the voices are really like human sounding, but it doesn't have that high frequency extension. The titanium driver, it has the highest high. So if you want a really audiophile sound, go for the titanium diaphragm, because it gives you like extension up to 20k, 20 kilohertz or even higher. But that one, the mid-range is not as good. You will lose the 288 magic, the mid-range for that. But there are two types of people. Some of them want that gorgeous human voice type of sound, the mid-range magic, and it seems that the other half of population inherited the gene that they want to hear really extended high frequencies, and they don't care about mid-range. So you can pick what kind of sound would you like to hear, mid-range or really high highs. I'm right now you are hearing my 288s with aluminum drivers, so that's kind of like middle of the road. It has still very good mid-range and pretty decent high frequency extension, but it's not one or the other. So this is like I would say like the best compromise. And then let's look at other things. So this we could call it tweeter, compression driver. It weighs 30 pounds. Yes, so it's heavier than most woofers for subwoofers, and it has a flux density, the 288K, of 20,500 Gauss. So that's 2 Tesla plus. So that's actually the 2 Tesla. That's the absolute maximum that we are able to create. That magnetic field is the maximum that we can create currently. If you want to create higher strength magnetic field, you have to use superconducting magnets, and it still doesn't go much higher than that. So this is like, if you want like a 2-3% change, maybe you can up it by 2 or 3%, but that's it. Here we are peaking out. This is like an insanely strong magnetic motor, and this is the same strength as the loader drivers use, because it was Paul Voigt who came up with this really high magnetic strength technology, and he started with the loader drivers, and then James Lansing also used Paul Voigt's inventions and his patents to create his own compression drivers. And the thing is that the 288 for the diaphragm, it moves only 0.035 inches. That's the peak excursion. For those people who are not in the US, for them this doesn't mean anything. So might translate it, it's almost 0.9 millimeter. So this is like a tiny, it's like not even 1 millimeter. So this cone virtually does no movement at all. So you do not get that sort of distortion that you get with tweeters, that because the cone moves so much, you are getting that type of distortion. Here, the cone is virtually not moving, so you are not hearing any diaphragm break up, even if you push very high. But we'll see what this 0.9 millimeter means, because you think, oh, I'm reading that here's this excellent tweeter from company X. It has a 2 millimeter cone excursion maximum, and oh, this is 0.9 millimeter. That's just half of the 2 millimeters. Bang! This is still moving a lot. But now let's just take a few more steps, and I will show you how we are mistaken, because those 2 millimeters excursion will be reached if we have to compare the two when we listen to at the same volume output. And I will show you, if we are cranking up to the same volume, then what are the actual excursions. And that almost 1 millimeter excursion, 0.9 millimeter, you never ever achieve it in your living room. You never even come close to it, because that would mean output at such volumes that your insides would be like squirting out. Why were they made to have such extreme high output level? Because they were created for movie theaters. And there, where you are like 50 feet away or 20 meters away, something like that, from the screen, then you need much higher output levels, because by the time the sound travels far away from the speaker cones, then you will have much quieter sound. So to have the same volume at a 10 times bigger room, you need exponentially bigger cone movements and sound pressure. And that was in his mind, to be able to handle extremely high sound pressure levels without distortion. So now this will be like Stereopolis style fight. I don't know if you guys know the channel Stereopolis. I started my audio channel because of him. So look up Stereopolis. And he started box matches for his Klipsch K-horn speaker, and he compared it with his other speakers, and you could bet like okay, how the match will turn out. It was totally awesome. So now I'm doing the similar type of match between the 288 driver, the compression driver, and what we could consider today as probably the best tweeter, the Focal UTOPIA's Beryllium tweeter, which is like, ooh, like really cool stuff. And it's really, we can say that this is the peak that our age has come up with in tweeter technology. So let's compare what we have as the best today to the compression driver that James B. Lansing came up. So now here we have Muhammad Ali's boxing match, and let's see. You can bet, all bets are off, because now we are going into the match. And see, before the match, I'm going to show you something that this is just about our mentality, how we think about stereo. That this is about music reproduction. This is for us going into art. So our loudspeakers and our systems are there to connect us to art. And it's a good system if it can connect you to art. And what we see now on the internet and in the community, that, oh, this is the best, this beats the blah blah, that sort of attitude, it's complete BS, because art is subjective. So what's best for you, another person, it might be completely intolerable. And I want to illustrate this with something analogous. So here on the left side, we have a Rembrandt. And to me, Rembrandt, he is the ultimate genius of painting. I don't know who of you have seen this painting or Rembrandt's paintings. Go to the Netherlands, to the Rijksmuseum, and then you can see Rembrandt's paintings there. So when I one of the times when I visited it, when you go into the museum, you see Rembrandt just staring at you. And here what we see, this is just a low resolution, nothing. This doesn't tell you anything about what experiencing it in real life is. It's astoundingly insane. It's like you are seeing it doesn't look like this has been painted It doesn't look like any technology that we have on Earth. It looks like something like that has life in itself. It looks like it's like a hologram. And these people are looking at you from another dimension. It's beyond freaky. And it really plays tricks with your mind. And I never in my life did any sort of substance abuse and didn't do any kind of things. And I'm not even addicted to alcohol or caffeine. So this is not because, I had some bad LSD experience and then I had a flashback or something. No, this is absolutely normal. And if normal people see Rembrandt, they are just astounded. Just it's like a jolt that takes you out from your normal frame of reality. And I think that's what art is about, and that's what a good stereo does to you when you have that feeling. And that's not because of the stereo gear, it's because of your relationship to your system. So if you right now I'll be talking about the Focal Utopia and James B. Lansing's creations, but you don't need to have either of these. If you have like some old TV speaker drivers that you found on the street and you built your speakers from that and you listen from your iPod or something like that, and it takes you to musical heavens, that's perfect. That's what you want to hold on to. And others will tell you that no, you need like at least 3000 watts because below that you do not have dynamics, you don't have bass responses. That's the absolute BS. If when people say things like that in their reviews and that's just for show. That's how you know that they are not connected to music. They are connected to showbiz. So our world is on the outside is turning into pure showbiz. And our duty or our task as audio pilgrims is, because we always get, or our first meeting is with the showbiz part of audio. So the audio journey is for us to take and look at the other side of the coin. That part of audio which is not showbiz, which is substance. And when you look at the substance part, you can find this sort of substance that Rembrandt has, or like the Mona Lisa, or when you look at truly astounding creations that affect you. So these are the ones that impacted me. But maybe you might be impacted by the creation of a modern composer or modern painter. Like here, we have this painting which looks like a cavalcade of colors, and someone deemed it fell in love with this so much that this painting was sold for $46 million. And you see, this is where the polarity in art comes in. That people who want one kind of art, they think that this other type of art is BS, and that person was swindled out of his money. And those people who want this sort of art, they think that the Rembrandt guys who are into Rembrandt, they're outdated and they live in the past, they are medieval, they need to just catch up with their century. All of them are wrong because that's what connects them to substance, and that's their substance. But your task is finding out where you are connected to. So now I'm going to show you this fight between the modern best and the compression driver best, so you can tell where you belong. Another thing, just look at that, because for the Rembrandt I didn't find any sort of price. But there's another Rembrandt, this gentleman, and he was sold for $8 million. And there's this modern out, it was sold for $300 million. And I put this in so that you can see that price has zero bearing on substance and content. So is this 40 times better than a Rembrandt? So now Rembrandt is passé because it's like 2.5% of the price of something modern. This is the same thing that happens to audio. So those gears that have the $1 million, $2 million, $200,000 price tags are the equivalent of this painting. It doesn't mean they are 100 times better than something that costs maybe like 50K, or maybe your stereo that you paid for maybe like second hand and the whole thing was $2,000. The price doesn't mean that. It just means that for someone that's the value that he puts on that. But the person who paid $300 million for that, he had like tens of billions. Was not a biggie. And so at one point price stops to have any meaning, and you really have to look at the substance to tell what's going on. So that's what we are going to do now, is just look at best technology number 1 and best technology from the 40s, 50s and compare them. So the focal beryllium tether, it has 0.78 inch diameter of the cone, so that's that size, so that's roughly 20 millimeters, and it has an inverted cone dome, and it's made of pure beryllium, so it's like super light and very rigid. So that's the best cone material for tweeters that we have today. And if you look at full blast extension, which means I just call it full blast, so that level, so it keeps their strength, its output level up to 30 kilohertz. That's freaking amazing, like going strong until 30 kilohertz, and then it starts to fall down. And then Focal put up the TLS-more parameters on his website, and they show the figures only up to like 34 kilohertz, something like that. So I don't know how far it goes out, but it goes out a lot. Probably I would say 40K, maybe at 50K it has decent output, I don't know. But it goes out quite a bit. So eventually the 288 has almost the same thing inside, because here we have that inverted cone, inverted dome tweeter basically. The diaphragm of the Altec is the same thing, it's also the inverted dome, so it's in the same configuration, so it's the bowl shape like this, and it's sitting down here at that base compartment. So we have the same half dome cups in both of the drivers, and they're firing up, so they use the same system. And here you see the diameter of the cone is almost 0.8 inches, and here the diaphragm diameter is 2.8 inches, so it's much bigger. If we count, the total surface area is about 13 times bigger for the Altec, so it can move 13 times more air compared to the other driver. However, then we have a compression chamber on top of that diaphragm, and then a throat and a neck that's 34 millimeters in diameter, and that diameter of the neck and especially the diameter of the throat, which here it's just even, it's the same diameter throughout, that defines the peak frequency extension. So and the frequency extension, it relates to the size of the exit hole. Like here, the diameter of that hole is proportional to the diameter of the focal driver. So if they were the same diameter, then here this unit would have the same frequency extension as the focal UTOPIA. But because it's bigger, so this is like focal is about 59%, of the size of the 288. So if you do the conversion, then this extends full blast up to 17.6 kilohertz. And actually I did a test for myself using the bare 288, no horns attached, and I added a signal generator to it, and I was cranking up, and I could hear it working up to 17.2 kilohertz. I could still hear the beep, but it's like a really high beep. So it's a pretty good estimate. And let's go to the next slide. So here we have the diaphragm of the 288. So I try to make it approximately so this is like the approximate size difference between them. So here we have, this is the diameter of the cone, and here this is the diameter of the diaphragm here. So it's this much bigger. And for the focal utopia, the magnetic the flux in the magnetic gap, it's 2.1 Tesla, and the 288K Altec, it's 2.05 Tesla. So it's a little bit more than 2% improvement during the past 50 years. That's, I would say that that really shows something. 2% improved. Yes. So the Utopia wins with magnetic strength, but barely 2%. What's that? Nothing. So anyway, when we look at the, I did not see the mass of the magnetic structure, the magnet mass for the focal. It was not represented on the datasheet. They only listed the full weight, which is 0.44 pounds for the focal tweeter, Utopia tweeter. The 288 compression driver is 30 pounds. So it's almost 70 times heavier than the focal. And when we look at the sensitivity for 1 dB signal, the Utopia gives 94 dB per wattmeter, and the Altec, the compression driver 288K, it gives 113.7 dB per wattmeter. When you look at the Altec data sheets, you will find 112 dB value, but that is per watt per 4 feet. And if you convert the 4 feet into meters, then you have to add 1.7 dB to the sensitivity. So we roughly have a plus 20 dB efficiency for the compression driver compared to the Utopia tweeter. Just think about it. 20 dB. That's insanity squared on the double. So let's now summarize a little bit and add somewhat more to see how these parameter differences work out to how we can, to how you would see the distortion characteristics of these drivers. So basically, because the focal Utopia has the 94 dB sensitivity, and here the compression driver is about 114, so there's like a 20 dB difference between the two. So this means that when you want to play them at the same volume, if you play the 288 at 1 watt output, you have to play the Utopia tweeter, Beryllium tweeter at 100 watts output level to have the same volume come out of the two. So what does that mean? The actually both of these guys have a rating that without crossover on it and EQ, they can handle 15 watts, but and with crossover on it 100 watts. But this is like a really rough thing. I would say that if you use the Utopia tweeter correctly and you cross it out over at very high, maybe like a 5 kilohertz or something, you can throw 100 watts at it, but you are already tapping it out. So it means that it's reaching max cone excursion, voice coil is heating up, so you have the heating distortion coming up, and all sorts of stuff that happen when you push your driver to the limits. So it's already ready to tap out. Okay, this is my last round, I can't keep any longer. But to get the same volume for the 288, you need to feed only 1 watt. And this is like, okay, now I'm getting, you know, I'm in the middle of my warm-ups. Okay, now I'm ready to fight. So this is like nothing, like zero pressure at the 288. So that's the huge difference. That when you listen to both of them at negligible volumes, then the Utopia is great. But when you crank up the volume, then it's and you have high volumes coming out, then you really experience a lot of distortion coming out of it. Although this happens at the level where the sound pressure peaks will be around 110 dB. So that's like really, really loud. But at that level, you will already get a lot of distortion coming out of it. And that's the reason why when you look at even like 200K, $1 million speaker systems, even though they demo it, cranking the fuck out of them so that your eardrums bleed, and yes, after 5 minutes you are ready to say, okay, where's the next ER? My ears are hurting, I'm ready to run away. Actually, that's what I experience when I listen to these systems. And it's happening because even though they are capable of playing that loud, but they introduce so much distortion at that level that your ears are literally bleeding. And if they are not, it means that you already lost most of your hearing acuity. Guys, take care of our ears. Be very careful with it. And if you are young, you are before that experience, so you haven't blown your hearing yet, then in that case, I would recommend to just take care and go for compression drivers, because they will be much more beneficial for your ears. And I think it looks like my voice recorder hasn't been recording anything. Gee, so you will be probably, let me see this. No, it's not recording. So you instead of listening to some really nice music and good quality sound, you are unfortunately stuck with really crappy sound. My apologies for that. That happens. So let's see where we are now. Let's get this gaming match to the end. So there's a 70 times weight advantage for the compression driver. So it means that when the diaphragm is moving, it's going to make your tweeter, your source resonate as well. And the bigger the mass is, the less it will resonate with the signal. This is like 100 times, 2 orders of magnitude bigger weight. So it means that it will, if we use the same energy output, the resonances that are created in that mass will be negligible compared to the other drivers' resonances. So if you are at 100 watts output and it's like working at the peak of its range, it's going to move that 0.44 pounds mass. It will be shaking like a leaf in a storm. And at the same time, there's that 30-pound compression driver. You have to add like a very sensitive seismometer to measure like the tiniest hairline vibrations on it. And also, this will freak out everyone, to have the same sound pressure coming out of it, you need 1,000 times less cone excursion from the compression driver. So the same SPL that you get from the UTOPIA tweeter by playing it at 1 millimeter cone excursion, it moves 1 millimeter, you'll get the same level by playing your compression driver moving 1 micrometer, 1,000 times less. And that's because we have 20 dB advantage in efficiency and 10 times greater cone size, and the two add up so that you need just that ridiculously low amount of cone excursion. So it means, and that, so imagine 1,000 times less movement is resonating 70 times greater weight. So as whole the things adding up, there is 70,000 times less mechanical resonance for the same output for a compression driver compared to today's best dome tweeter. So just please try to just get just think about this fact that there is a potential for almost 100,000 times lower mechanical distortion for a compression driver for the same volume. And please add to this that for this compression driver, you need to play 1 watt instead of 100 watt to get the same output. So you are feeding it with a much lower signal. So we are nowhere in the range where there's any kind of heating occurring in the voice coil, so that distortions caused by voice coil heating are not happening, and those are really nasty distortions, because when your voice coil is heating, it changes the resistance of the coil, it changes the sensitivity of your driver, and it totally throws it out of whack. And that's why those modern fancy schmancy speakers with their domes, if they're played really loud, they make your ears bleed because they distort because of the thermal distortion and those gigantic mechanical vibrations added to it. And here for a compression driver, we are having almost 100,000 times less mechanical distortion and negligible heat-induced distortions. So it's like, this is like a total knockout, like a 100-fold knockout, like the compression driver knocking the today's best traditional or conventional tweeter, ultra modern tweeter. It just cannot even enter the building. It's not just it's knocked out in the ring, it can't even enter the continent. That big of a knockout. So that's what we face. 70,000 times less mechanical distortion, 100 times less thermal distortion. We have 20 dBs headroom for peak sound volume, and we also have 20 dB peak for dynamic resolution. Total knockout. So this is where we end off today. I hope everyone knows the Father Ted series. It's a BBC series. It's one of the best on the planet, and it just seems too good to be true. What's the catch, Ted? So next episode we look at the catch. Thank you for listening, and I hope you really like this illuminating little time that you spend here. And please like and subscribe. Thank you.